Good morning or good afternoon. Happy Wednesday. Happy hump day to you. I hope everybody's doing very well today. Just a little progress update. I did a little research from time to time. I do some research on setting up Zoom meetings, which I think I have mastered. Going to the meetings tab, schedule. The tricky part, the hard part for me is copying the link, sending the link, and the recipients being able to open the link. That's my worst fear, is to set up a meeting with to secure a podcast guest, because you're asking somebody to set aside time to be on your podcast when you're not even that well known, and then to have the embarrassment of having technical problems and them not being able to open up the link. But I did some more research on it, and I think I know how to copy the link and send it. But I'm going to try and practice with myself again, because I've tried to schedule meetings. It's very embarrassing. I'm just going to try to sit there with my phone and try to open the link myself. In the past, I've asked people for help with practicing with me. But see, people aren't that nice. They really aren't there for when you need. Because I've gone in Facebook groups for podcasters. I've gone to open mics for comics. I've just mentioned it in general. Even like on my postings, my videos. Nobody ever responds. So people aren't really there for you. But you know what? In the end, when I finally master that, I'm gonna feel even better, because I can say I did it myself, that I figured out myself, that I put aside my anxieties, and I finally I figured out how to upload in YouTube. No one taught me how to do it. It just takes patience and repetition. Anyway, I wanted to talk about the pandemic today. Anyway, because we were all affected by the. Even if you were in prison, you were affected. Imagine being locked down in a cell, having to wear a mask, being forced to get. At least when you had a job, you could decide if you wanted to quit or not, if you wanted a vaccination. Imagine being in prison and being forced to get a vaccination. That's besides it, but the pandemic affected us all, some for the worst, some for the best. Some people lost their jobs or just had a total change in perspective and started their own business, or went back to playing the guitar, or became a content creator at home. For some people, beautiful things for them came out of the pan. Other people, terrible things happened. They had meltdowns, mental breakdowns, being alone, the isolation, losing people you love. It affects people in many different ways. Personally, I call the pandemic the great big divide in my life, because I had a life that I knew before the pandemic, and here is a second life that I am still in the works of building. And in between, like the old life before 2020 and the new life, which I've been creating after 2021, there's a great big divide. There's a canyon in between, but a little bit about myself. I'm used to being alone as it is. A lot of people could not handle the pandemic. It got to them because they're always around people. They're always in crowds. They're always going together with people. They're always at parties. They might be the center of the party, or they may be part of the side, but they're part of a group. They are part of a social curriculum, and they couldn't. I'm used to being alone. I've been a loner most of my life. But how it affected me was, I was living with, and I don't want to get too personal. I'm not here to blast anybody. I'm not here to bring all my personal business out. I'm trying to be vague as possible. I'm talking more about myself and how I'm in a work in progress. But I was living with a family member, and we were the last two members left in our house. Everybody had left us one by one. One family member had left us several years before, and another family member had left us about a year before the pandemic. So it was just the two of us together, and it wasn't really healthy for either of us, because both of us needed to form our own lives, yet we were together in isolation, and we ended up resenting each other and becoming more and more emotionally dependent on each other. And the one thing that kept us together, me and his family member, was our love of a pet. We had a cat that we both loved very, very much, and this cat was getting on in years. He finally lived, he lived until the age of 17, which is pretty good for a cat. And I think, I didn't want to leave, and the other individual didn't want to leave. As long as that cat was there, we both wanted to be around that cat. And when that cat passed away, it took about a year, but I ended up moving out and forming my own life. And that's what came out of the pandemic for me, was being down to the realizing how unhealthy my relationship was with that family member, and how it was not good for either one of us, and how we needed to separate and grow as individuals, both emotionally, spiritually, physically. And that's my story from before the pandemic. I had a career, I had a job. Every day there was people I saw in the office. There were clients I saw. I lived in the same community for several years. I had family nearby. So that was my life before the pandemic. I no longer work in that career. I retired during the pandemic. I was very, very lucky. I didn't have to get that shot. A lot of people who were working there were forced to make career decisions, keep the job and get a shot, or quit and not get the shot. And I wasn't forced to get the shot. I was due for retirement anyway. I was planning on it anyway, so I was able to get out. I missed the hatchet, because a lot of people who got those shots didn't want them, and they find out that they have medical complications. But that's besides the point. I'm just saying, I had a life before the pandemic. I have a life after the pandemic. I am no longer living in the region where I was living all my life. I live across the U.S., so away from all my coworkers, away from people who I grew up, even though I was kind of separated from people who I grew up with anyway. They all had moved out and started their own. But I'm away from everything I know. I'm alone. I'm finally the single bachelor who I was always envious of, because I was younger. I had a family, I had cars, I had children, I had a spouse. I always had something to do. I had pets, and I used to be envious of people who were all alone, who could come and go as they want, who can keep their home the way they want, who could just stay inside for days and not talk to people, or disappear for days and nobody's home, nobody's waiting for them. And now I'm living that life of the single bachelor. And it ain't that great. It's not terrible. I'd rather be doing this than the way I was before, because I was unhappy before. But there is an element of unhappiness here too, because sometimes I just want someone who I could visit, someone I can sit down and have lunch with, someone I can go to the movies with, someone I can just run into and know. Someone, it's kind of lonely to be all alone in the community when you have no family. But a lot of other people like me who come here away from their family to start anew, and I'm forming a community of my own, but I'm starting from scratch. It's in its infancy, but this is part of my new life, and this is how the pandemic has changed my life. Everybody has this story of how the pandemic changed their life. I really have nothing further to say. Thank you. If you were watching us in YouTube, thank you for watching. If you were listening to this on one of the platforms such as Buzzsprout or Apple, thank you as well. And I hope you enjoy your Wednesday. I'm out.